Final Destination is back with Final Destination Bloodlines. Okay, I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm a huge fan of the Final Destination series. I think they got better as they went along. I'm not saying each one was progressively better, but the first one was a cool concept. The second one really took it somewhere new. The third one really locked it all in. And from then on out, it was just a thrill ride. And I saw them all in the theater and I love them. And I try not to get excited about new movies because more often than not, that leads to disappointment. But I was kind of very excited about Final Destination Bloodlines, and it was warranted. I really thought this was a fun movie. So, basic concept, if you've never seen a Final Destination movie, I'm not going to tell you the whole story. I'm not really going to get into the story of this one too much, because the joy of any movie, but especially the Final Destination movies, is the surprise and the seeing all the little bits and pieces of the puzzle slowly come together and thwart your expectations damn near every time. So basically every Final Destination movie, and this one is only vaguely connected to the other ones. You don't really need to see these in any kind of order whatsoever. They really all pretty much stand alone. One or two tie into each other, but even then, I think they work fine. If you've never seen one, you watch them as you do. Basic concept is some really horrific thing happens at the beginning of the film, and it is revealed to be a premonition of somebody who's about to die in that really horrible thing. That person does a little sidestep and avoids being killed, but death has a plan, and death is a vengeful spirit, and one by one, everybody who was saved in this event meets their maker in very creative, gory, darkly comedic, Rube Goldbergian ways. And Final Destination Bloodlines is no different than that. It does a slightly different twist on this in that the basic concept here is horrific thing happens, spectacular opening set piece, very well shot and executed, and I mean executed in multiple senses of the word. Spectacular opening, somebody avoids death, and then decades later, we find out that death is coming for all the family, thus the titular bloodlines. Death is coming for all the descendants of the person who survived this massacre at the beginning of the film. And like all the Final Destination movies, you have to figure out who's next and how to try to prevent this from happening to you, and be pretty unsuccessful for the most part in doing that. So it's very funny, very grim, very gory, a mix of practical and CGI effects. I did listen to an interview with the directors who had not made a Final Destination film before, but were big fans of the film. And they said they tried to use as much practical effects as they could, and CGI only where they had to for safety. I mean, they're not really going to do to people what you see do to people in this film, but it is shocking. I was giggling throughout the film. Great use of music. Very good popular tunes used very darkly and cynically in the film. Like I said, a lot of surprises. Some of it is a little silly. There is an aspect of the film that whenever a movie does this, I'm just like, okay, this is a little goofy. But the person who avoids death at the beginning of the film has spent the rest of their life trying to ward off death and prevent themselves from death, and builds this like insane scrap metal compound, which just seems silly, just like it seemed silly in those new Halloween movies where Jamie Lee Curtis had like a bizarre booby-trapped fortress for a home. It just seems a little ridiculous and over the top, but these are Final Destination movies, so I could overlook that pretty easily. The effects, as I say, are shocking and wonderful and goofy and extreme and gory if you're into that kind of thing. Characters are likable enough. Our protagonist is very likable. Some of the characters are not, so that's typical modern horror. You're kind of waiting to see them go. One of the most unlikable characters has a death scenario that is probably the most ridiculous I've ever seen in a Final Destination movie. And if you've watched the Final Destination movies, there's some pretty ridiculous concepts, but it's kind of hilarious and kind of ridiculous. I really, really had a good time with this movie. I saw this in IMAX. The ads touted filmed for IMAX. Not all of it is filmed for IMAX. Front to back, not filmed for IMAX. There are scenes and sequences that are. So there were many times during the film where it was the full IMAX frames, but other times it was widescreen. And watching this, thinking about that, well, if I was seeing this on a regular format screen, would the compositions look very cramped? Maybe. I think if you can see it at IMAX, it's not... To me, IMAX is something you use for grand vistas and beautiful scenery and things that really draw you into the film. For a regular narrative film, it's just watching the movie on a bigger screen with, louder sound. So if you can't see it in IMAX, I'm not going to say you're missing anything, but I will say for those who are curious, yes, chunks of the film are shot for and in IMAX. Did it make that big a difference? I don't think so. And ultimately, when you watch this at home, you're probably going to be watching this in the widescreen format and not the IMAX format. But honestly, between you and me, the premium format thing for the most part is just a way to charge more for tickets. I like the Dolby Cinema at AMC. I think it's beautiful and luxurious. I like an IMAX screen because I just like a really big image. If you're seeing this anywhere else, you're still getting the same movie, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. Where would I rank this in the pantheon of Final Destinations? I have no idea. I just really hope they keep making these, because all you got to do is what this movie did. You take that basic format and that basic concept, and you just weave a very spectacular opening that plays on phobias and fears people have, and then throughout you just come up with really creative, darkly comedic death scenes for people, and you got a good movie. The original pattern for the releases of the Final Destinations was basically one every 3 years. They took their time. I always said this with the Bond movies too. They used to be every other year, every 2 years for the James Bond films. Occasionally there'd be a longer lapse, and I would be, take your time. If you can give me a movie that's not just You Only Live Twice's script redone, that's great. And I say that with the Final Destination movies. If you can keep making these fun and creative, take your 3 years, take your 4 years. But I would love for these to keep coming out. I've missed them. It's been a shockingly long time since this series started, and it's back, including a character from one of the previous movies. So it does have a tie-in. Anyway, in theaters now, I really, really enjoyed this. Final Destination Bloodlines.